And welcome to episode 9 of the QCast. I'm Bob Quillman, and I'm very excited to be joined today by someone that I've actually never met. And we were just talking a little bit off air about that. Charles Belt, who is the head coach at William Woods University in Fulton, Missouri. Charles, it is funny. We were talking about you follow people on social media, you interact with them, and you've never met them. It's kind of a weird age that we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's kind of amazing. I said that we have this. We're connected to everyone. It feels like now, and whether that's good or bad, I think only time will tell. But you get these relationships essentially that through social media, you feel like you really genuinely know someone. I mean, the media aspects allows you to see pictures, videos. You can listen to them talk on live on Twitter or any of those things, and then you actually meet them. Like we get to this situation where you're having a conversation and you're like, man, I feel like I know you, but this is really cool to actually finally talk and get to see the other person.
Yeah, likewise. I was looking forward to this. As I was telling you, I had a really short list of people that I wanted to start this QCast podcast series off with. For a lot of reasons, I had you on that short list. We'll get into that as we go. I think one of the reasons is you have such a broad base of experience at the small college level. I'm a Division III fan, but I also started out as an NAI fan. When I grew up in Chicago, my dad took me to St. Xavier games. And so NAI was the first small college basketball I knew. You've worked Division III, you've worked NAI, you've worked Division II. And I want to get into all things small college basketball with you, if that sounds cool.
Would love it, man. That'd be awesome.
Let's start with your current role. So I think you just completed year 2, if I'm not mistaken, at
That is
William
correct.
Woods. I used to live in Columbia, Missouri for 3 years, about 10 years ago, and I used to go to Fulton to watch Westminster games. So I know where you are. Tell us about William Woods University. Tell us about your program.
William Woods is we're a small private liberal arts school. One of the really unique things about us as a university, even not talking our basketball program, is William Woods was an all-women's school until '96. And then we went co-ed, and you still essentially kind of have the trickle of that. I mean, we are 80-20. We're 80% women, only 20% men. And of that, most of those men are athletes. Most of the men are athletes. We do not have football here. So, a lot of the male population on campus are men's basketball, soccer, golf, track and field, cross country, et cetera. So that's unique. I think that it lends itself to some really cool experiences on campus. It's a very safe campus because of that. We do a tremendous job of being mindful of campus safety and patrolling, because we do realize that we are protecting young ladies a lot of times, making sure that they're safe and they're comfortable in this community. We also are a huge equestrian program, and I didn't know that when I took the job. Our equestrian sciences, our pre-veterinarianship is amazing here. We have 150 horses on campus. We have stables, we have a rodeo arena. It's really unique and cool. Once you see all that and you just go, wow. And I've been blessed to, I take the approach, and I think it's part of that small college aspect to me of, I don't like being just the basketball coach. I am a member of our diversity and inclusion committee. I was very huge in heading a diversity minority scholarship that we started that, praise God, we were able to get off the ground. I'm a part of we're putting together Rosa Parks Center for Diversity and Multicultural Enrichment. I try to have my hand in everything. And I feel that at a university like this, I've been able to do that. And that's why I love this level. I love this level because of that.
You're from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I'm from the South side. You're from West. Had you ever seen a horse when you grew up? I mean, what age were you when you first saw a horse? Tell me.
No, growing up, no. I would say, well, as you talk about me, I went to Ripon.
Oh, you saw there were horses on the way to Ripon. I know that.
So once he got to Ripon, I ended up in Wisconsin. And I remember my first time even going on a farm. I was a sophomore in college, first time I had been on a farm. And getting here and seeing that, and now being so immersed in, we have a lot of equine students. So, they're in their get up, they go to lunch, they got to get back on the horses afterwards. it's really unique and different to see, but it's a culture here that's really cool. You know,
Sometime I'll on the QCast, I'll tell my detasseling story when I got to Bloomington, Illinois for college, and I had no idea what detasseling was, and I really embarrassed myself. But it will not be on this episode today. I also will say that I've lived in Dallas for 7 years now, Texas for 7 years. I still have not been to a rodeo, and I'm kind of
really,
proud of that. But at some point, I'm going to have to go over to Fort Worth to a rodeo, Charles. I'm just,
you gotta at least check it out. You gotta check it out. I've not officially been to um, an event. Actually, that's false. I went one time in Marquette, Michigan. I was coaching at Northern. They do a yearly, and a couple friends were able to convince me, hey, you got to check this out once. And I did. And it's different. I mean, it's different. It's not even just the rodeo aspect. It's the whole production. You know, you have all these guys, they're in their makeup, they're in their outfits. There's just so much going on. But yeah, it's here you actually get to see them practicing. A lot of times they're out practicing. I haven't actually gone to an event that we've put on yet. No.
So a little different culture, a little different place. Tell me about the program that you're building. You know, you're 2 years in, so you're just a couple years into this effort. But I know that building a culture is the first thing that a new head coach will try to do. What culture are you in the process of building at William Woods right now in the men's basketball program?
That's a great question. When I took the job here, this is a crazy thing. I only kept 5 players, and none of that was based on basketball talent at all. You kind of get the folder when you take any job, and you're just going through a lot of things and great, really good people, but a lot of red flags that just didn't sit well with me. And after going through that process, the crazy thing is, you finally go online and start looking through, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I just got rid of 8 of my top 9 scorers, an All-American, play for newcomer of the year, all league this, all that. And you're just going, whew, we're gonna build this thing from scratch. You know, I mean, we are gonna scratch kitchen. And I think that for me, the first thing that I like to establish, and I like everyone that I'm recruiting to know, is basketball is a tool. It's a tool. I do really well with the young men that understand and have a vision or a goal of where this game can take their lives. I can admit, and as a coach, you're always working and developing, I do poorly with the guy that just wants to play basketball. I don't do well with that guy. And I think part of that's my upbringing. I'm an inner city guy from the west side of Chicago, and I've seen the opportunity get thrown away, right? More so than I've seen the opportunity be successfully utilized. And that's that's the vortex of the city, right? And that happens for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes that's outside influences, that's circle, that's bad advice. It can be plenty of things that happen. And so because of seeing that and growing up around that, and then myself going and playing college basketball, getting my degree, and where that kind of helped channel my life, I value that. I won't say I overvalue that. I don't think you can overvalue the degree, but I value that to such an extreme. And so I recruit those guys. And I am named or labeled the first chance coach. I love guys that don't have offers. I mean, if you look at my roster, even when I was associate head coach at Northern Michigan, I'm not a coach that looks and goes, when a coach is telling me about a player, who else has offered him? I don't care. I want the guy that doesn't have any offers, because there's an appreciation and a value to the opportunity. And if I can get a collection of those guys, I feel like as we develop, because now I have to develop them, they have to continue to improve, their will to earn it, their will to prove everyone wrong, helps them push through that glass ceiling. And so if you get a collection of those young men,
Sure.
you have a chance. If you can get them there, and you can get them to be juniors and seniors, you gotta take your beatings early. You have a chance to do something special. And I feel like that for me is how I've built this program, and how I would build any program.
What's the recruiting process like from a standpoint of dealing with rejection? I follow the recruiting process really closely at my alma mater, Illinois Wesleyan, and I know that there's a moment where a kid texts you or calls you, and it's either good or bad news, and you've invested sometimes 12 months or more into this kid. What's it like when the guy that the one you've been recruiting for 12 months and you've been to 15 games calls you and says, sorry, coach, but I'm going blah, blah, blah. I mean, how do you guys as coaches deal with that side of it? I think it would be incredibly difficult.
It's really hard. I mean, it is really hard to get a no from a player that you do two things with. The hardest no's are the guys that you build amazing relationships with their families. And of course, recruiting the player is a part of recruiting the family too. I mean, I
Right.
think the coaches that do a really good job recruiting, they understand that it's a family decision. Those initially are the hardest for me because a lot of times you have that connection with mom or whatever. You still want to have that, but you understand that for whatever reason, that young man doesn't think that you're the coach for him. The fit's not there. The second one are the players that are going to elevate your program in more than one facet. When you look and you can see, obviously their talent is going to help you on the court. Who they are is going to help the culture that you're building. Their personality is going to be awesome in the locker room. And you can envision what this looks like over a 4-year process. And that kid says no. It's really tough, right? And I'll give you a parallel. It's crazy to say, but what it's like is being in a relationship. I mean, that's literally what that feels like. Is you see the relationship for what it could be, right? You see all the things that could come out of this, and you're like, man, and then you get the nope. And in recruiting, it's not only just a no, right? Like it's not just a no, it's a no, and I'm going with somebody else.
Yeah, that's not good.
So it's literally, if you were in a relationship and that person told you they were going to be with somebody else, that's that feeling. And you'd never get used to it. I'll say that. Like, I don't know any coach that can say, oh, I'm just used to getting no's. What you realize is that it helps you value the yeses even more.
Sure.
And so the no's don't hurt any less. The yeses just feel that much better. Like you celebrate, and you are like, I've been on the phone and I've had a kid, like, he can hear me be like, yeah, I'm like going crazy. I'm so jacked because the yeses mean that much, because they're choosing. A lot of times when a young man and his family say yes, the university, of course, has to do their part, right? The university has to fit their academic. You have to have what they want in school, things like that. But we still all kind of know the yes is to the coach. It's to your vision and what you're building. And it's so like gratifying to know that what you're doing, someone else sees it.
Right.
And they want to be a part of that.
What was this year like, Charles, with the pandemic? This is your second year. Here you go. You're fired up. COVID hits. You're uncertain for months and months if there's going to be a season, what the season will look like. The season gets here. You do have one, fortunately. I've asked a lot of coaches this so far, but I'm kind of fascinated by what it was like to coach and play through the pandemic and everything you guys had to do to make this possible. What was this season like?
It was hard. I mean, just being blunt and frank, it was hard. It was the most, and again, I'm a new head coach, right? Like, it's the most difficult year already, and here in year two. For us, our school self-implemented not playing in the fall at all. None of our sports competed in the fall. And so, I had a moment that was really hard for me, not necessarily depression, but it was really low because of how much I invest in my players. And I knew how hurt they were. Like, they were hurt to get that news in August, and they had just moved in. We're looking and going, I mean, we liked our team as year one. We added a few guys going into this year, but like anything, when you recruit all high school and young, each year you get a little more excited because they're getting a little older, and you're like, the window's coming, it might be coming. And so we were fired up. We had despite the quarantines and stuff over the summer, we had some really good Zoom meetings. We had some understanding of what we wanted to do. And you got your calendar, you got your book. You're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is the dates. And we have that meeting as an athletic department. I knew my gut. Our idea was like, look, we got a Zoom meeting at like 7:30, 8 at night. And I know whenever that's never a good one. All right. I mean, come on. We all know that. That's like any business, you coaching, whatever you do in life. And I used to, before this, I worked in financial aid. If the boss wants to meet with everybody at 7, 8 at night, it's never to say that there's something great going.
Correct.
And it was to let us know that we weren't going to do anything in the fall. And to then have to tell our players that was hard. And so that's the initial, like that's before you even get to even trying to play. And my guys did a great job of picking me up. They let me know, look, coach, we're here. We're not planning on transferring. We're here for you. We're here for the program. We'll do individual work. We'll do everything we need to do to be ready. And we were off that whole time. We didn't practice, nothing. And we get to second semester, we practice 3 times, and we play the number 5 team in the country the first game. We just get the doors blown off, right? I mean,
Right.
just get annihilated. And
It was at Arizona
Arizona Christian.
Christian, right?
Arizona Christian. And I mean, the next game, so because you're scheduled, you have no non-conference games because it's canceled in the fall. So I'm just scrambling to play anybody. So the next game we play like number 11 or 12 in the country in Talladega, and we play them to a 1-possession game. I mean, it's a 3-point game in the finish. And it gives you that sense of, okay, I value my guys because they want this. But coaching through it was brutal. Their class schedules, they don't know. Some days class is in session. Some days it's virtual. The professor or the professor's wife or husband may catch COVID. Now it's their quarantine, so class is canceled. It's all online. The body, the body is a creature of habit. There's no habits you create in COVID.
Right.
We practiced a whopping total all season of 27 times.
Wow.
And most of those aren't even real practice because you're cramming an entire season in 6.5 weeks. So every practice is just preparing for the next game. You never work on you. You're just looking and going, all right, this is the next opponent. This is what we're going to do. This is the next opponent. It was crazy. I'll put it this way. I don't wish coaching in COVID upon my worst enemy.
Can I ask just a little bit about mental health? Because I think throughout the pandemic, a lot of it's been unfortunately politicized and people want to pick a side. I'm not going there at all. I'm just truly asking you as someone that leads young men and as a leader on a campus, the mental health side of this, I have to believe was a very real concern during this whole process, and young people not being able to do what they would normally do and associate the way. What was that like on a campus full of students and student athletes looking at that side of it?
It was something that as a coach you had to always be mindful of and always respect. I think that, kind of that this year really pushed coaches to get out of the old school mindset. And I don't really feel like I personally have an old school coaching mindset. But I've played for guys that are like that. You had to get out of that this year. I mean, there were days where a young man would literally just say, Coach, I don't got it today. And, sometimes in the old school way, you're like, what do you mean you don't got it? You got to push through that. You got to, you got to grind it out, etc. And in all reality, you really had to kind of take a moment and take a step back and go, you know what? I get it. I understand what you mean by not having it. I had COVID myself. I actually had it. I had to isolate. And isolation for me was the hardest. I mean, it gave me it changed my approach when a kid had to be quarantined. And I'm great. You're never grateful to get sick and have that, but I'm grateful for it because I'm a social person. That's who I am. I feed off of other people. And to be by myself and, a couple people FaceTime me, but it's minimal. I just started thinking, I did that in a home, right? Like with cable, like with stuff, internet, all that. And I just started thinking, could you imagine being in a 12 by 12 foot dorm room?
Right.
And you can't leave to go get food. Your meals are being dropped at your door. So it's probably cold by the time it gets there. You have no stove. You're not heating anything up. And then to be asked to still do your schoolwork. And when you get out of it, go through all these testing we put you through to make sure that, your EKG, your heart, your lungs are good. And then, coach wants you to hit the ground running in practice. I mean, I think we're going to see long-term effects of mental health that we don't even know about just yet. And not just for our student athletes at all levels, but for a lot of people and kids. I mean, just, one of my GAs is a full-time substitute teacher here at the middle school. And that human nature is a spirit of inclusion and love. And the kids want to hug each other. They can't do that. Like that, you can't tell me that that's not going to play a role at some point in lives that we weren't even able to embrace the people that we love. You have family members looking at each other through the glass. Like my grandmother's 99. She turned 99 in December. And, the first time I went back home over Christmas, you got to be very mindful of that, right? So it's like, I didn't even get to go to the room that she was at. That play as a grown man, you can get through that. But I can imagine that if you're a child, you're looking at your grandparent. It's just, I think, Bobby, I think we're going to be talking about this 10 years from now. And that's when it's really going to hit people that this pandemic was way more than economic and political and all those other things that we make stuff about that don't have as much merit as we give it too much merit.
It's a great perspective, because if people really stop to think and learn what these student athletes had to do this year in order to play, from a fan's perspective, I really wanted to see, Illinois Wesleyan and the CCIW play, but thinking through and talking to Coach Rose about what it took for those players to test negative, like you said, the staying in your dorm room and not going anywhere, and incredible commitment, but at an incredible cost. And you make a great point, and that's incredible perspective. I want to go backwards a little bit and talk about your job before this, which was at Division II Northern Michigan, which is a strong program in a strong league. Division II NAI, talk about the difference between the two, the similarities between the two, and then we'll get a little bit into that Northern Michigan program. But how do you compare NAI and Division II?
I've always looked at levels, because a lot of times you get that all the time. What's the difference in level? And I always view it as depth more than your top end players, because obviously, if you're fully funded, we were fully funded at Northern. You have at Division II, if you're fully funded, you have 10 full rides.
Right.
Now, when you have that, most schools, you can divvy that up by stacking that with some academic aid. If you have young men that are on Pell eligible, things like that, you can stretch that to fill a really strong, deep roster. At our level, and they were NAI was initially my first year. It's kind of funny because I was a part of the transition. My first year, we were two divisions.
Right.
NAI was D1 and D2, and they had scholarship restrictions that were different. With the merger now, if you're fully, if you and I don't know how many NAI programs are, you have 8 fulls. Now we're not. We're not. I'm not even going to tell you who we are, but we're not that. We are not that. I think that when you look at it from that point, because talent, when you do a great job recruiting as a coach, the money plays. Let's just be real. 9 times out of 10. Now there are stories and outliers of guys that are walk-ons and they earn it and they're starters, and it's like, those are amazing stories. But for the most part, the money plays. So if you have more money, typically you have a chance to get you have more depth and better players. I think that's what you see. And so what happens when you see these games where NAIs play D2s or D2s play D1 or NAI play D1 is usually the start of the games are the starters can play with the starters a lot of times. Now, unless you're playing
Sure.
a high major, right? Or something like that. Yeah. But some of those low levels that are close, the starters are neck and neck. When you see the upsets happen, it's because I believe the other programs have more veteran depth. So even though that kid may not be on money, he's a 4 or 5th year senior. He's a vet. So when you go to the bench, there's not as big of a drop. Where sometimes at those higher programs, and we see, the portal's at 1,700 transfers,
Crazy.
Right? Like now you go to the bench and this kid may be uber talented, but he's a freshman, so he's not as grizzled, he's not as experienced. And so that's what I find initially is the scholarship money makes the difference. The second part is of course the talent disparity in the leagues. Once you start looking at quality D2, and the GLIAC is one, top 3, I have a bias, right? Leagues of all D2 basketball, in my opinion. We've had multiple Final Four appearances. Fair State won the national championship this few years ago.
Right.
The difference is that the league parity is crazy. The teams that are the bottom beat the teams near the top all the time. Like it's rare that you see a team that just can't step on the court and win a game. Like where you go into a game and you go, okay, because no coach likes to say it, but you kind of know, all right, this is one we're going to take care of. When you start dropping in levels, you see that parity in the league stretch. The have and have nots get a little greater. And that's what I think you notice. And that's where people that don't understand Division III, Division II, and NAIA, they catch the wrong type of game. And so they see a team that's in the, no disrespect, it's in the have-not pool, and they go, oh, that level's not any good.
Right.
And they just don't, they don't understand that Okay, watch Northwest Missouri State and tell me that team can't go into a Division I league.
Sure.
Be one of the top 3-4 teams in that league. Bellarmine jumps into a D1 league and does phenomenal, right? Like, don't tell, like, the high ups of Division II basketball are really, really,
And I
really.
think that plays out in all the divisions, because if you look at, like, you played at Ripon and you look at the Midwest Conference, St. Norbert has
St.
been
Norbert's.
great, and I know they've left that conference to move on, but what they've done the last decade in the Midwest Conference, but it was them and Ripon and a couple others where
Lawrence used to be really good when Tharp was
yeah,
at
Lawrence
Lawrence.
was phenomenal. But you
Yep.
compare that to the Wisconsin Intercollegiate with Stevens Point, Whitewater, Oshkosh, there's like 6 St. Norberts.
Yep. Yeah. Without a doubt.
And that's the difference. The league that you played in, or coached in, I should say, in Michigan, was a deep league where there was tons of depth and parity, and there was all kinds of teams. The bottom of the league would beat the top of the league. And that had to be just kind of a grind every night out in that conference. Is that right?
Oh, it's crazy. And of course, good leagues are tested to two things. Number one, you have really good players. I mean, players still play the games. Coaches, we can try to do everything we can, but our eligibility is done. And then you have really good coaches. And you have and when you're in a league like that, your preparation is amazing, right? Like, it has to be. And that was what helped me in coming here, was to be in a league like that and to understand the prep that goes into that. And I worked for a really good head coach in Bill Saul. He'd been to the Sweet 16 twice, won the GLIAC 4 or 5 times when he was the head coach at Ferris before he took over at Northern.
And he's now Calvin.
Right? And now he's at Calvin. Yep, he went back to his alma mater. And so now he's at Calvin. And I mean, his first year, they're really good. This year, obviously, COVID weird, but they're going to be good. You just know.
Yes, they will.
You know they're going to be good. And you just look and you go, this is how you have to prepare. And I thought was interesting. I still follow the league. This year they did the play Friday, Saturday, the same opponent in the same spot. I want to say most of the time it was splits, right? It didn't matter if this team was 1 or that team was 8 or whatever. They were splits because the coaches are so good. Yeah. That in one, it's hard to beat a team twice, as you know, anyway. But to do it the next day when that coach can make 1 or 2 tweaks and, the player level is not that different. The talent's there. They just have to adjust. I didn't know that you were going to zone me of that much this game. Okay, let me make that adjustment. I thought that it was, I thought it was made that league extremely competitive to watch from the outside.
It also played out in Division III. I remember watching Oshkosh and Platteville play opening week, and Platteville won. And then the next night, they go to Oshkosh and Oshkosh wins. It just, to your point, it's really hard in a good league to get a sweep on a Friday, Saturday night kind of setup. That's a really difficult setup.
It's not. It's nuts. I mean, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to get sweeps anyway, but to have to try to do it back to back, knowing that what happens. I mean, psyche always happens, right? Your players get a win, and you as a coach may come in and go, all right, we know they're going to adjust these. You're going through that with them that night or that next morning, and they're going, we just beat this team. They are. That's human nature, right? That's just human nature. They go, we just won, coach. And now they don't mentally prepare or accept the preparation that you have as a coach. The other team just lost. So they're thirsty for answers. So they're taking everything in like a sponge. You throw the ball back out there, you tip it up. What do you know?
Let's talk Division III a little bit, because you have a lot of roots in Division III. You went to Ripon. We mentioned in the Midwest Conference. You also were an assistant coach at Beloit.
Yep.
And talk a little bit about your playing experience at Ripon and playing Division III. What was that like, that experience in the Midwest Conference at Ripon?
I always tell people the first thing, like that eye-opening moment where you realize how good Division III, because that's, I mean, again, I was an inner city kid. I played at Providence St. Mel High School. We went downstate my sophomore year. I mean, Providence St. Mel is one of the powerhouse private schools. Like, we're always really good.
Brand name IHSA school, for sure.
St. Mel, right? And had some phenomenal players too over the history. So, in my mind, I'm not even gonna lie, right? I'm showing up at Ripon. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna come out here, ball out. It's gonna be great, and just get my butt kicked as a freshman. We had a guy, Tommy Becker, that was player of the year in both soccer and basketball. He was fun. He was a stud. And I remember coming home over the summer. I didn't play much my freshman year, like 2-3 minutes a game. And I remember coming home over the summer, right? And your boys, everybody's talking, man, bro, we following. He didn't play that much. I said, man, we got this guy, Tommy Becker, that's ridiculous. And they're like, Tommy Becker? What? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And
Tommy
like,
Becker
okay.
became the name.
If I brought him home and he played this league, he would just dominate you guys. He would be phenomenal, right? I mean, he would be able to pull off stuff that no one else could imagine. And that was the eye opener. And I just realized right then, you got to be better. You got to be you have to be good to play at this level. And that's when you now transition to when I got coaching in that level, that's where the recruiting really started to happen. Because I think Division III recruiting often isn't selling the program. It's reminding or selling these kids, don't think you're too good to play here. And the kids that accept that, and it's not necessarily humbling, but they look and go, you're absolutely right, I'm gonna come and work, end up being phenomenal Division III players. But that's kind of the challenge of the recruiting is a lot of times, those kids, families, their circles, everything just kind of look and go, D3, it'll always be there. That's the other thing you always hear too when you're recruiting, right? I'm a weight coach because this D3 will always be there.
Right.
And it's like, no, like the good programs target recruits. Like I always tell people that, like at that level, people think you just take everybody. No, you target recruits, you have a whiteboard, you are hammering out the recruiting line, you're making contacts, you're doing visits, you're at their games. I mean, you know who you're trying to get at that level to be good. And I know you follow Wesleyan all the time, right? I know that's I mean, they go through their recruiting board. They know who they are trying to recruit, who they are trying to get, and they are battling D2 partial scholarships. They are battling NAIA partial scholarships and succeeding in those battles. And Oshkosh does, I mean, you went through lists, right? The WEAC, I mean, Midwest Conference, we always would do the WEAC games because, they, no one likes to say it, but I mean, I'm not in the league anymore. I'll throw it out there. I mean, they feel like Big Brother. I mean, they do, right? It's like, and they carry themselves like that. They're like, look, right. we're the WEAC, you're the Midwest Conference, right? Like we're Big Brother. And so you always play them. We played at Beloit. We'd always play them. When I was at Ripon, we'd always play. I mean, we played Stevens Point every year. We played lacrosse. I remember playing it would have been my senior year. We're at Point after they had won the Natty. They won it back to back.
2004, 2005.
Yep, 4 or 5. And we were there the year after they won it back to back. And I remember walking in that gym and it was just booming. And I'm just like, wow, like this is it. And this is awesome. But it's nothing, it's something special. And Division III, the other thing about D3, and I don't want to get too long-winded, is the environments for games are uniquely special that you really don't know about until you go to a D3 game.
Yeah.
And for us, our rival was Lawrence. You go to a Ripon Lawrence basketball game at either place, the environment's absolutely nuts. And we were pretty good. We were like 25th in the country or so the years that Tharp was there and went to the Final Four back to back. So we would play them 3 times every year. We'd play them, home, away, and then in the conference tournament championship game. And you just want to talk about wars, right? I mean, just absolute wars. And Coach Dan Evans, I don't know if you who was at Ohio Dominican for a while, played at Lawrence, and we're around the same age. I mean, you just remember those games for forever. I mean,
I've been to is it Alexander Gymnasium in Lawrence? Like Lawrence's Alexander. That place, it was as loud as any place I've been in my life. Little tiny gym that's 150 years old, and incredibly loud.
Right? You walk up to the door and it's loud. Like even before you walk in, it's loud. It's brick and stone. It feels like it's shaking in there. Now what's been really cool at Ripon, like when we played Storrs Gymnasium was old school. It was the old gymnasium. Since, my goodness, it's just phenomenal what they've done in there. Yeah. Redid the weight room, redid all that. And so I think you're seeing that. Like, I think that the respect for small college basketball is increasing. I think that social media has helped that a ton.
Agreed.
We have a lot of outlets. I follow NAI Hoops Report, does a great job of really promoting our sport. There's the small college basketball that has a social media. There's another one I forgot, like the Cascades Hoops Report or something like that.
Yep.
We're getting a lot of attention for NAIA, D2, D3. And I think that's changing recruiting. If you notice, you're seeing more kids not feel like they're too good for a level. I think that exposure is helping. And I think that it's giving people that really didn't pay attention to it the sense of not only is this good basketball, but this has been good basketball for years.
Gives people more voices too, Coach, right? It's there's people out there that have a narrative of you need to go as high as you can go, and Division II is too low, and Division III and NAI. I think social media has leveled the playing field a little bit, because you can post game clips and say, are you as good as that guy? Like, are you better than this kid that's playing Division II or NAI? So I would agree with you that social media has helped that, because I do think there's voices out there that for selfish reasons are pushing kids to go as high as they can go, when maybe that's not the right fit. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir on that one.
No, and I've that's the gift and the curse of our sport. And I know, you're from Chicago, I'm from Chicago. It's you see that in Chicago all the time. Yeah. And I've always said that when I talk to kids, even if I'm not recruiting them, when I just go speak at a high school or go talk, coach say, hey, coach, come in and talk to my guys. I always try to remind them this, is that you have to think about, what does someone else get for sending you as high as possible, even if that's not the right fit. And a lot of times that's what it is, right? It's the ability to tweet out that I have sent 37 guys to this. And if those intentions are selfish, then how can you fully believe that they have your best interest at heart?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the messages that when I talk to a lot of guys about recruiting, that I always point out, make sure that the people that are giving you advice have your best interest at heart.
That's great advice. And that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on here. I knew that you'd have perspectives like that will kind of help share this message of small college basketball and, listening to multiple channels. I'm curious too, how you got into coaching, because I know at Ripon, you were not, or you were a business and mathematics major.
Yep.
How does a business mathematics major end up deciding to be a college basketball coach?
It happens on accident in a way, and you realize that certain gifts and tools and things that are part of your characteristics or who you are put there for a reason, and we don't always know what God's purpose is until you walk into that purpose. And so when I first graduated, I worked on an online admissions job, and basically it was glorified sales in a sense. I interviewed for jobs of doing like retirement portfolios for Merrill Lynch. I was planning on being corporate America. I was doing that job just to kind of buy some time. It was really good money. And I've always had kind of the gift of gab. So I was very good at recruiting students to online university. I mean, recruiting is recruiting, no matter what you're doing that in. And, I was doing a lot of stuff on the side, though, helping with accounting things. I was doing some stuff with people that were writing grant proposals for nonprofits, just kind of using the math business. And crazy as it is, I then got into playing poker for about 1.5 years.
Nice.
I played in like if you're familiar with the Midwest, people that listen to this know the Heartland Poker Tour. And I was a part of that, and I played in a league that they ran down in Hammond, Indiana, a good old Horseshoe Casino, and then also Majestic Star. And I took first place in that league, and so it brought you into one of the main event tournaments, and I did pretty good. And I was like, you know what? I like doing this, and so I kind of did that for a while. And while I was doing that, a friend of mine back in Wisconsin in Oshkosh started an AAU, very grassroots AAU program. And was just like, would you be interested in coaching these 16, 17U teams? And I'm like, cool. I'm kind of playing poker. I got free time. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do it. We weren't very good that first year, but the connections I made with the kids, they all told him, their families, like, look, we'll come back if Coach Belt's going to be our guy. And I was like, you don't want to I'm like, all right, I'll do it. I'll do it another year. And while I was doing that, Coach Veraney, who was the assistant at Ripon that I played for, was the head coach at Beloit, was recruiting a few of my players. you know, in the program, it just says the name. You don't really know who that guy is. He shows up at a game to watch our guys, and it's me. And right away, he's like, I didn't know you were into coaching. And I'm like, I'm not planning on being in the coaching. Like, you know, you're always awesome. You know, you've always had that kind of it factor. He's like, but, you know, you're in math, business. He's like, I didn't know that. And I said, me either. He's like, well, I think you should look at possibly doing it. I think you'd be pretty good. And at the same breath, Adam Zakos, who played at Ripon, was a heck of a player at Ripon, was head coach at Fond du Lac High School, reached out to me about being his assistant there. And so just kind of a couple of doors open. I was like, whoa, wait a second. I have people asking me about coaching. I really have never, you know, in the corporate world, you know, applying for bank jobs and things like that, never was being recruited to the profession. So I go to Coach Rainey, I interview with him, and this is the best part of the story. You know, he tells me he'd love to give me the job. I'm like, I'm really thinking about it. He goes, well, one catch. All right, what's that? I can only pay you $500. And I'm like, $500 like a month? Like, what are we talking? He's like, no, for the whole year. Like, that's all I got for you. I'm like, I got bills. Like, I have a car note. I have bills that I'm paying right now. And he's like, you know, that's all I can do. And I prayed about it, talked to my mom. My mom's a minister. And she was like, you know, sometimes you never know what your purpose is until you walk in it. And I called him. I said, I'll take the job. And he's like, do you want that in like a stipend monthly? I said, Brian, if you don't give me $500 right now, right? Like, I'm not about to take $48 a month. Like, stop it.
Right.
and that's how I got into it. That was it. It got me on the sidelines at Beloit. Recruited a really good player. Steve McAfee out of Chicago was the first player that I ever recruited. We're still close to today. He just signed a really big contract in Japan. And it's funny, I'm actually going to see him next week. He's coming to visit me before he gets on the plane. And so you build, I mean, those are the relationships you build. I mean, we're 10 years removed from that. Cool. And he's still my guy. And so, yeah, we had some success, got things turned around there at Beloit for a couple of years. And Coach Saul got the Northern job, called me. And again, same thing when those leap of faiths, right? I go up to Marquette, I mean, it's Canada, basically. You know, I'm like, I ain't never been to Marquette, Michigan in my life. He was smart. He brought me in July, so it's beautiful, right? The beach is gorgeous. Didn't tell me we were going to get 350 feet of snow when we get to December.
Right.
And I took the job, man. I took the job, moved into a dorm room. My first 2.5 years there, I lived in the dorms and made it work. You know, small stipend, made it work, and then got promoted to the associate head coach. And when that happened, that was the first day that I began to make a living coaching basketball.
I always find it fascinating the paths people take, because some people know, you know, their whole career through college that they're going to be a coach. And so they major in this and they get their master's and they're on a path. And I really find interesting the stories like yours that weren't incredibly planned. You're playing poker on the tour one day and the next. You mentioned, Charles, your mom, and I know that you were raised by a single mom. Yep. And you know, on the South Side, some of the kids that were in single parent households, you know, that was a tough environment a lot of times. And the West Side, it was the same thing. You know, talk about that environment that you were raised in with just your mom and on the West Side, and that can kind of go south on someone pretty quickly, right? If your mom must have been awfully engaged with you.
My circle, I call them my three queens. My grandmother, my mom, my sister. And if anybody follows me on social media, you see I post pictures of them all the time. Like those are my pillars. And so, you know, initially kind of growing up, my grandmother was always a part of it too, you know, and my sister and I are 11 years apart. So she was almost like another mom also. And so it was never easy, because you always ask yourself, especially when you're a son, you know, when you're a man yourself, you always want to know why or where that person is and why they're not there. And you, when you're the man of the house at a young age, it really changes. And I think it's helped me be a good coach. I think it helps me be a great person in relationships and everything, because I value the role of mentorship. Because a woman, I always say this, and this is, and again, it's coming from someone that's in that environment. There are just certain things that a woman can't teach a man. There are certain things that a woman can't teach a young man. And my mom taught Chicago public schools for 36 years, right? I mean, 36 years. And people that know CPS, I mean, God bless.
Yeah.
We had some days that were just crazy. You know, you get kids that your mom puts them in detention and they know they can't do anything to the teachers. So they're trying to find you. You know, it's just crazy stuff that happens, right? And we kind of had an agreement. I didn't go to school where my mom taught because we just knew that would not be good. You know, you're always being over anything you do. They're going to tell your mom anything that happens. I mean, so we stayed away from that. But she taught, and so, you know, teachers are, we know that in our society they are underappreciated, underpaid, and she did that. And because me and my sister were separated in age, not separate, like we're separated in age. My sister went away to college, and so it gave me a lot of time for it to just be me and my mom. And so my respect for watching everything she did every day, the way that she worked, the way she kind of grinded, and the fact that there was never a moment ever that, you know, you felt like you couldn't do something or have something. My mom wasn't like that at all. Like we were always, you know, next step, next day, you know, and we had our good days, we had our bad days. And it was just amazing to watch and to see. And then, you know, as you get older and you begin to become your own man, to see her appreciation for the man that I've become changes how you feel on the inside. Right. And we won a game this year. We beat Columbia here at home. It was, you know, big game. That's our rival. And she sent, I'll never forget it. I saved it on my phone. She sent me a text and was just like, you know, I absolutely love the man you've become. And that's just the greatest thing that
that's
you
can do. That's a pretty cool thing to hear.
When you've been through the wars with that person. Like that is my, she is my greatest critic and my greatest fan. And you're right. I mean, you know, Chicago, and people that know Chicago, there's potholes through even if you got both parents, no matter what you, I mean, yep. I went to school at Providence St. Mel. It's off of Madison and Central Park. We're across the street from Garfield Park, the Golden Dome. I mean, we've walked home and you know, seen some stuff that you're not supposed to see as a kid. I used to take the Green Line train because I lived down on Austin. So I'd hop on the Green Line over at Central Park, you know, and you'd have to walk from the school to the Green Line. I mean, people that don't know, I mean, it's not an area that you want to be in all the time.
Right.
And that's what you grew up like that's, I mean, we hung out there, we went skating, you know, back in the day, you'd roller skate, right? We'd go roller skating, bowling. And, you know, to know every night my mom's a minister, she prayed every night for me. And I'm a spiritual and prayerful person because I know, me and my cousin talk about it plenty. There are days that we would not have made it home if that woman wasn't there praying. I know that. I know that there are certain days that you look and go, how did we get home that night?
Well, that's why I asked about your kind of how you grew up, because single parent situations, when I grew up, and I was lucky to grow up with mom and dad, but I think half of them went the wrong way. You know, half of those guys were out doing the wrong things. And, you know, the other half got lucky to have a mom like you did and to do the right things like you did, because I mean, that just, it can go sideways pretty quickly in that situation. So kudos to your mom. And that's a pretty cool story. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about something else I dug into in this QCast research, but people may not know that Coach Belt is a cook, a big time cook, right? Like I read somewhere that your dream is to be on Chopped on the Food Network.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't know about poker, but now we're getting into food. Is it like, what are your specialties, Charles, as a cook?
Oh man, yes, I do. I'd love to get on Amateur Chop one time. I joked and I said, if I ever got fired, right? Like if I ever just got, somebody said, no, you will never coach again. I want to start a cooking comedy show where like I'm telling stand up while cooking and then feeding the audience after the show, right? Like that. I would love to do that.
You might need to copyright that.
I shouldn't have said it out loud because now everybody on social media is going to get it. And when somebody makes a lot of money doing it, I'm going to look and go, that was my idea. But no, my best dishes, I would say in morning breakfasts, I'm a big steak and eggs guy and doing it in a lot of variety of ways. You know, sometimes people just do the, you know, grill a steak and have your eggs next to it. I have a lot of different varieties of ways to make my versions of steak and eggs. I have a person that begs me all the time when I'm around to cook succotash. I love making succotash. It's just one of those nice, fresh kind of breakfast items that can carry over to sides later. Dinners, I mean, you give me shrimps are very versatile. I love dishes that have shrimps. I can throw down on some ribs. You give me a charcoal grill. I don't like gas grills. You give me a charcoal grill, a pan of water, and a slab of ribs, and I can throw you down some ribs. That'll work too. So I mean, I cook. It's funny because I cook for myself more now, but I really cook for other people to enjoy. I don't like cooking and eating in my own food because I'm like, if it's really good, I'm like, nobody got to actually try this.
Right.
Like,
Frustrating.
Yeah, it's like, man, nobody else knows that this is a good one, right?
Right.
So it's funny when people visit, we go out to the pool, or I love when it's multiple people and I get to cook for a group. Yeah. My assistant Terry, his mom and his stepdad came and visited, and they were going to go out to dinner, and they were like, "Can Coach Belt come over and cook?" And he called me. He's like, "Coach, do you mind coming over and cooking? Like if it was going out." Like, now they had never been to Columbia. It's like, wait, they don't want to go out? He's like, "No." And I made like this shrimp pasta with this. I make a garlic Parmesan spinach, and we whipped that together with some garlic toast, and they were like, "This is better than any." We couldn't have gone out and got a meal like this.
When you win the national championship, I want you to host a big meal where you're the chef and you're cooking for a bunch of us that are your fans. Is that a deal? When you cut the nets down, when you win
if I get a chance to if I can make it to the pinnacle, I will do a Coach Belt catered celebration, and we'll have at it. I'll let people through social media send menu suggestions, and we'll get it done.
Well, everyone's heard that. Wanted to shift a little bit, Charles, into kind of social media and some other topics. There was a cool tweet that you made, or at least one that resonated with me. I don't even know if you'd remember it. It was a while back. I actually found it through some search words, and it said, "Athletics is the central hub of diversity. The locker room sometimes is the first interaction of people of different races." And that really resonated with me because I grew up on the South Side in a very white neighborhood, an Irish Catholic white neighborhood. And when I went to high school at Brother Rice, it was really the first time that I had been around a lot of diversity. And it was through sports that happened. And it's exactly what you said. It was the thing that put me in a situation where I got to know people of different races, and we got to kind of learn to respect each other, know each other, put down stereotypes. I think that's something that tweet must be something you're pretty passionate about. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll start by saying this because you asked me about William Woods in the program. And I always open when people, I've had a lot of discussions because obviously the last year, especially during the summer, there was a lot of race discussions, and I'm one of those outspoken and people, I was, hey, we'd love to hear your perspective. And so I always open by saying this. I'm so grateful to our AD here, Jason Vitoni, and William Woods as a university, because I remember, and I was coming up in my coaching career, being told multiple times that I was too pro civil rights, was something that I was told once before, that, my approach or that outspokenness is going to hinder your opportunity to get a head coaching job or things like that. And here it's not something that's even dealt with from a toleration side. It's celebrated. I mean, we celebrate the opportunity to speak about diversity and stuff. So I always like to open by being thankful that I can openly discuss this because I don't have to fear anything from a job standpoint. My stance on it is this, and it lets you know that our country, even though we don't like to say it out loud, whenever we talk about diversity, and we know diverse is, you just say, Irish Catholic, like diversity is a difference in social economic status, race, ethnicity, culture. Like there's a huge spectrum. But whenever you hear the word diversity, what do you think about? Black, white, right? Like that's which I say that because of that should make people more aware that it's way more something that we should be able to discuss than we do, because that's what we always dive to when we hear diversity. And what I love about athletics and my journey, my high school was all Black. My neighborhood was all Black. I was recruited by some HBCUs. My mom told me something that was really special. She said, the world doesn't look like our community. and the opportunity to go to Ripon, which, I mean, we had 3 brothers on the whole team,
Right.
and it was 14 of us at the whole school when I was there, was the opportunity for me to shed that and see, okay, these are the interactions you're going to have. And if you're going to be successful, no matter who you are, race wise, you need to be able to interact with multiple people of different colors and cultures. And what athletics does, and the reason I think athletics helps in her and really, does a great job in diversity, is athletics creates a common goal and a common struggle. And if you think about it, in the course of our country, and we have these moments all the time, but we sometimes forget about them. And it's funny because everybody's got the hashtag never forget, but we forget. When something like 9/11 happens and you look at the videos of people at a baseball game, no one's thinking black and white because we have a common struggle. We have a common hardship. And so it's amazing when I see race issues and I hear people make it seem like there's not a way to heal or unify. I struggle to believe that, because I know that if there was an instance where something bad happened and you were on a plane or whatever and it crashes or you're left in this, you're not going to look and say, all right, I need to hold the rope for this guy to get down the mountain. We're stuck. I'm not going to hold the rope because he's white. I'm not going to hold the rope because he's black. So we're both going to die on this mountaintop because I can't hold a rope for a black guy, right? That's never going to happen. So I find that athletics does a great job, because athletics is all about, and good coaches do a really good job of this, creating the next struggle or challenge for the team. Sometimes that's making you the bad guy. Sometimes the team unifies because, coaches own one today. We're running, but there's a unification and struggle. And I had it on our warm-ups at Northern. I've said it here. Unity is brotherhood and sisterhood. And that comes from the common goal. And in athletics, you have the struggle through practice. You have the struggle through conditioning. You have the struggle in the weight room. And you little by little, you get closer and closer and closer to the guys that you're with. And then you have the competition. And when you're competing, you don't care what that guy looks like, where he's from. Is he a farmer? Did he grow up on a dairy farm? Does he grow up in the west side of Chicago? Or is he from the streets of Toledo? You don't care about any of that stuff. You just know he can rebound and we need to get the boards. And this dude can make threes, so I got to get him the ball. Like, you don't think about that. And that's why athletics gets it right. I think too often in our everyday lives, we divide and we separate and we create all this tension because we don't value the moments that we all struggle in that are the same. Like, we forget that we have the same struggles. Depression doesn't care about race. Sexual assault doesn't care about race. Abusive marriages or homes don't care about race. That we have the same struggles. And if we ever sat around and were able to unify and discuss those struggles, we would look and say, and that's why I call a lot of people brother. We would look and say, man, my brother, you are going through something that I went through. Single parents aren't a race thing. Like, I hate when people have an assumption that single parent means black. No, I know a lot. I've recruited white players that are in single parent homes. Me and that player relate really well because it's a common ground. We have more common grounds in our society and our world than we want to admit, because we keep being told and taught, because it's a learned behavior. We keep being told and taught that division and separation is better. And we keep being told and taught that you can't obtain something if someone else is trying to obtain it. And that's not always the case. Now, yes, there are certain jobs and positions where you will get yours at the expense of somebody else, right? For me to get this head coaching job, somebody else didn't get it. Somebody had to lose it. But when we look at the things of life and happiness and support and loyalty and those goals that are very obtainable, we can do that. Bob, Quillman, and Charles, we can do that hand in hand, and we can elevate each other to enjoy those aspects of life.
Can I ask you, Charles, just a little bit of how do we extend that outside of the basketball floor or the volleyball court? You said there's this common goal, and you don't see black and white. You see the guy who can shoot the three, the guy that can rebound. What it feels to me like is that we don't have that whatsoever outside of athletics. It feels to me like there's these issues that bring to light the problems in our country with race, and everything explodes. And then people go into corners, like average people that want that aren't racist, that want people that or want things to be good. They end up kind of finding a corner because they don't see on the media like they're being pushed one way or another. So how do we extend that to just regular life, what you're describing with athletics?
I think the first thing is to admit I've said this before, the statement that I eliminate with my team or with players, because my team is diverse and white players have everything. The statement that I like to erase right away is not seeing color, because we do see it. I mean, we see it right away, and to pretend we don't is, I think, the initial, not problem, but I think it allows a barrier. It allows us to put a barrier. I think the first thing is to see it. The second we see it then is to find the value in the difference. And so if you take it outside the athletics arena, because again, in day-to-day life, you can't just create random struggle and things like that. Those, sadly, we have those moments in our country. They're called tragedies, right?
Mhm.
And as you see every tragedy, what do you notice? You see linked up arms without a barrier of race, right? Even if the tragedy involves race, which I think is very telling,
Yeah,
right?
good point.
And uh, I think that because those tragedies, we're not trying to create a bunch of tragedies. What we do need to create is an appreciation for the differences. And I feel like the people that you're discussing that kind of find themselves on both sides, because both sides have aspects that need to be fixed.
Mhm.
I hate when people say, "Oh, well, white people need to do this, black people need." No, like we all have those issues that need to be addressed. But to pull yourself back and to be silent, often because on both sides, you're afraid of the vulnerability of having the conversation. It's a very vulnerable conversation. Why? Right? And if you can push through that and you can be a little vulnerable and you can admit that you don't know or that you don't get it. And we all are like that. I mean, head coaches are kings of not wanting to admit certain stuff, right? Admit you don't know. It helps at least the other person feel like you're empathizing and you're genuine. And I see that outside athletics in plenty of communities where you have really strong diversity. The communities that have great diversity in them often are an appreciation of the genuineness of the person. And it's because at some point, whether it's when they moved in or when there was a block party, whatever, someone or some group of people are willing to be a little vulnerable and actually learn about the other person and value what they learned. I think if we could do, and again, I'm just a lowly civil servant, right? I don't know how we do that on a grand scheme, right? I mean, maybe that's a political campaign I should run on if I was going to do that, right? Like, I don't know how we do that.
Can I
But
ask you mentioned a political campaign that just triggered Charles Barkley made some comments during the NCAA tournament that went a little bit viral. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but he basically said, look, I think 90% of white people are good people. I think 90% of black people are good people. I think it's a lot of it has to do with our political system and kind of pushing people into corners. And I don't remember exactly how he said it, but it was close.
yep.
Do you agree with that politics hurts this? Do you think politics helps all this? I'm just curious as to your take on what Charles Barkley said.
I'm probably I'm the king of the. I think the word politics and politicians has been so perverted that when we bring it up, right, what we really don't like in politics, that no one, the elephant in the room is corruption. We don't like corruption, and that's where I agree with Charles Barkley 1,000%. Is that the corruption creates greed, and greed often feeds on division, because you can sell a group something way more if you can bottle them up and push them to this. And then when that group stops buying it, what you do is you quickly swing over to this group, and now you let that group know why they need it, right? Like you
Right.
gotta have it because of this, and the
Right.
other. And that, whether that's race or that's anything, we do that. We try to find a way in the corrupt aspects and the greed aspects to monetarily profit off of people's fear. And that was the thing that I thought COVID this whole summer really talked about. Not the virus, and again, not the sickness, but we did a lot of play on fear. And a lot of people, which is really scary if you think about COVID, there was a small, less than 1% that made a lot of money off of that fear. And I think that happens all the time. That's been happening. I mean, it sucks to bring it up and nobody likes to talk about it. That goes back 400 years into slavery. The profitability of slavery often fed on the fear more than it fed on, division. It was the fear. There was a fear level. And that's what I think Charles is talking about. We glamorize as politicians because they're the faces, right? They're the puppets. But there's a corruption, there's a greed, and there's a fear. A lot of times, people that I find that if I can actually have a conversation with them, and we get to certain race issues that are really really contentious, there's a fear factor in there. We see it again. I mean, and again, it sucks. I feel like it's a broken record. I've been through it my whole life, right? We have another young man shot by an officer, taser gun. Take whatever you want. Take whatever you want out of that. Okay. What I witnessed when I watched that is yet again, whatever was going on, a level of fear that caused somebody where they didn't know what was whatever it was, right, to react in a certain way, and obviously ends up resulting in the loss of life. What gets troubling as a Black man when you watch multiple videos and you see you see people being apprehended safely or not, is often, not always, but often, the officers arriving have an elevated level of awareness and nervousness, or whatever it may be, when the assailant is Black. That's not always there when the person is white. Why and where does that fear come from? If we can get to the root of that. Now, is that media? Is that movies? Is that television? Is that this? Martin Luther King actually said that it's in the verbiage, that we don't realize it. He said that a lot of the issues in the words. If you look up the word Black and you pull the synonyms, the words are evil, dark, dirty. There's a lot of really in the verbiage. If you look up synonyms for the word white, angelic, clean, godly, right? He was on to something there. So maybe that's it. Maybe it starts all the way back to the core of the verbiage. I don't know, but that fear is what's scary.
And would you agree, Charles, that one of the keys to this is getting people to take on these things they're scared about, or insecurities, things they're scared to talk about, but take them on head on and kind of get into the conversation, as opposed to heading separate ways or not saying anything at all? Because I think that's what happens most of the time, is people see all this stuff and they don't know what to do. So they just tune out completely. I mean, it would seem to me that, and I want to know if you agree, that it's the conversation process that's going to get things where we want it to go. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with you 100%. I think that, yes, we are, and we all are. When we don't like conversations that make us uncomfortable. Nobody does. That's the meeting with your player that you don't want to have, he doesn't want to have. Nobody likes those. I do believe that yes, when we don't know how to fix something, our initial gut reaction is, I don't know how to fix it, I'm not even going to try. It's like if you broke a chair, if you're like, I can't fix a chair, I'm just going to leave it, or find somebody that can fix it because you feel like you can't. I also then feel like, on top of that, that silent component also comes into, it doesn't affect me directly.
Right.
It's always very interesting. And because I like to always look at parallels outside of race. A lot of times the people that are extreme advocates of breast cancer awareness or things like that, what do you notice? Their stories always include someone that's been through it, whether it's somebody that they know. Certain people that you would think are silent about it or not, they don't have, it doesn't hit home with them. It doesn't resonate. I think COVID was a lot like that. It was very interesting. Sure. The people that never dealt with it at all, whether it's at home or whatever, you heard there was something, it's a hoax, it's this, right, like, because they just never dealt with it. So of course, right, it doesn't affect you directly. And so you're like, okay. It happens in a lot of arenas, LGBTQ communities, hate crime, things like that. If it doesn't affect me, and that's the selfishness of human nature that does stink. I think human nature is inherently helpful. I think human nature is inherently giving. I also think human nature is inherently selfish. And we have to fight that selfishness. And that's, I think, the last component what you're touching on.
Agree.
It's easy to be quiet, because if it's not affecting me, young man's killed. Well, you know what? My son's never going to be in that situation, so I don't have to worry about it. Versus me, I'm teaching my players when they get pulled over where to put their hands. I mean, I literally tell them, and this is not a joke. I wish I was lying. I let them know that when they get pulled over and the officer gets to the window, for them to say their first and last name, that they are a college athlete and what they're studying. And someone taught me that. Like when I get pulled over, I remember in Ripon. I mean, I was in Ripon, right? Hi, license and registration. My name is Charles Belt. I'm a college basketball player at Ripon College. I'm studying mathematics and corporate finance. And as crazy as that sounds, for whatever reason, it takes their fear away a little bit, because now I have value. And that sucks that you have to, what I mean? Like that sucks, but I have value now. And so it's like, oh yeah, hand me your license registration. And next thing you know, everything's all good.
Yeah, that is pretty scary that you feel like you have to coach your kids, and that as a student athlete, you had to be coached, but it's honest, right? That's you're dealing with an issue head on. I guess as we start to wrap it up, and thank you, we've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes. It feels like 20.
I love it.
I guess what I would say is the reason I want to have you on is because following you on Twitter, I feel you're very authentic. You've been very, to your point, you have been outspoken about some things that probably most head coaches are scared to, because they're scared they're going to alienate somebody in their program, parents, alums, the players themselves. I think you've been very authentic in the last year. Think about it. Think about all the crap that we can debate between race and COVID. I mean, absolutely bizarre last 12 months. And you have been very honest about what you felt all the way. And I respect the heck out of that. That's really why I wanted to have you on, because I knew that you would share kind of a real story of what you were feeling. Appreciate that. I always like to give the guest the final word. There's going to be some people tuning into this that know Coach Belt and some that don't. What would you like to leave people with in this QCast episode 9 today?
I think that the biggest thing about myself, and what I hope if I have a long career being a head coach, translates to me being good at this profession, is ultimately for me, I value people. I've always had, even since I was younger, just an immense amount of value and respect for people, and I love seeing other people succeed, and I love being a part of that success. I love having a role in that. I love being able to support, or whatever I need to do. I've always liked doing that, and so I think that when you look at whether it's the program I'm building here, whether you follow me on social media or who I am, what you're always going to see is this guy actually cares about, one, the players, the families, the university, the department, everything. And as a result of that, he gives all he can of himself in order to elevate those aspects. And that goes for my followers on Twitter. A lot of the stuff that I tweet I'm not subtweeting much. It's to try to elevate something or someone or some sort of thought. I do often trigger thought, and I do that on purpose, because I think that when we take time to think, we grow. And so that would be kind of the first component. The second thing is something that was told to me when I was younger, and it kind of ties into what we're talking about here. I was told that I had a personality that transcends race. And I never knew what that meant as a kid, right? You just don't know what that means. And I as I've gotten older and I've kind of defined who I am as a person, who I am as a man, I was able to more define that as that what you see with me is that who you are, Bob Quilmer, anyone, I am going to always find what I think is the good in you and what you do really well, or what you bring to the table that's valuable. And because I do that, even though I may see race, whatever that ethnicity is, you never feel like that. And so I can walk into a room, 20 white people, I can walk in a room with 20 Hispanic people, I can walk in any room, and I value everybody to the point where they look and go, this guy's great. And so I think that's something about me that has nothing to do with sports or anything like that. And that's what you get if you follow me. If you do, you get a recipe of a guy that just really values people. And I have no fear. I don't really worry. I know that my steps and my journey's always been directed. I know my mom is very spiritual and prays for me. And so what is for me is for me. And if something wasn't going to work, it's because it wasn't supposed to work. It wasn't because, oh, I did this and it ruined it. No, it wasn't for me. So that's kind of the last bit for me. But I appreciate you. I mean, this is awesome, honestly. And I'm just so happy we got to talk. You know, I feel like we've known each other, but this was really cool.
It was. This is better than retweeting you, or, you know, the ways that, you know, you click like or whatever. And Coach, I really appreciate this. You know, if I'm buying stock in a small college basketball program, I'm buying stock in William Woods right now. I know you're only 2 years in, but I think anyone that listened to this podcast today will see where the program is heading. And so really excited for what you're building, and most importantly, the way you're building it. That is Coach Charles Belt, the head men's basketball coach at William Woods in Fulton, Missouri. Charles, thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate you, Bob. Thank you, man. Have a great one.
Thanks.